Cool. So I have one more question for you. You don't have to answer, but I'm sure you're seeing apps in your dreams even.
Always.
Welcome everyone for this second video with one of the key partners that I'm bringing on board Streaming Made Easy Live, taking place on September 11th in Amsterdam, the day before IBC starts. And it was just a natural fit. Matthew and I, we've known each other for a long time. I think, both FX Digital, his company, and Streaming Made Easy share a lot of common values. So Matthew, super happy to have you for the event, and thank you for your time today.
No worries. Thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to the event, and thrilled to be chatting with you today.
Nice. So Matthew, for those who don't know you, what do you do? What does FX Digital do?
We build connected TV applications. So my role is as managing director, and in that role I oversee our leadership team and support them and enable them in delivering all the stuff we do. But I also get very hands-on with our client strategies, and we do a lot of workshopping and discovery stuff. So I would say we're in the heart of the challenging, fragmented kind of like CTV OS space, and kind of living and breathing it.
I love that. Yeah, when we first met, actually, I was surprised to see how dedicated you guys are, right? Meaning that you're not like a lot of, app development companies, in the sense that you are very much focused on the big screen apps. So if anyone wants web and mobile, they got to go somewhere else. But if they want to go big screen, you're it. Do you want to tell us a bit more about the type of folks you work with?
Yeah, of course. So exactly that. So we believe that by focusing primarily on connected TV, it just gives us that time to really master it, to kind of help illustrate that. When it comes to recruitment, we kind of can be really laser focused in our recruitment. When it comes to training, we know what kind of stuff we need to train people on. When it comes to building, we have a limited number of frameworks and technologies to choose from, so it really does give us that laser focus. And then with web and mobile, we bring partners in to do that, and there's some really great partners out there that do that. We work with all sorts, so work with various parts of the BBC. So do a lot of work with BritBox, who are having great success internationally, especially in the US. So we're very familiar with building for some of the weird and wacky devices, like the Comcast devices, the Cox devices, and Comcast syndication partners. But I've even experimented and built for other platforms like Fetch in Australia. So we've done lots of work on like the major CTV devices, but then also lots of work on the kind of regional operator set-top boxes. Alongside BritBox, we also do some work in the sports sector. So we've worked and continue to work a lot with ATP Media.
Okay.
So we built the tennis TV application for TV, and I think that's live on all sorts of devices. I think even Xbox, I think, is a console that's live on, but also things like Amazon Fire, Samsung, LG, Roku, the usual suspects really. Yeah. And then more recently, we built the CTV applications for Dyn Media, which is a kind of sports OTT platform based in the DACH region, so Germany, Austria, and like. And on that, for those guys, we built across, again, lots of different CTV devices, including, I think, Magenta and Sky in Germany. So again, some like niche regional operator devices.
Yeah, big screen doesn't mean just CTV, right? Especially in Europe, where still a lot of the viewership is happening on set-top boxes. And so, of course, you got to be able to develop that same app on a Sky, on a Magenta, on an Orange, etc. Super interesting.
Exactly. And a lot of our customers see a lot of value in those more regional operators, because they have a much more direct relationship with, say, a Sky Germany than they would have with like Google or other big TV manufacturers like Samsung. And as a result, they can enter very beneficial commercial terms that allow them to promote their applications on their devices. And when they launch on those devices, those regional operator boxes with agreements with those operators, they tend to see quite a lot of gain from it.
Yeah, and those platforms have been in that video aggregation game for a long time, meaning that they know how to take people from TV channels, SVOD, TVOD, etc. Where let's face it, right? Even for Samsung, it's still a few years in the making, and they don't have all of the tools and all of that expertise to very much be one entertainment hub for everyone. They're growing, and there's no doubt about that. But all of the data that I've seen, especially in Europe, is that sometimes you're looking at a player maybe with a smaller scale, right? Number of active users, but the time spent is incredible high. Also because, folks are paying, right, a monthly subscription to access a lot of those video services, and they want to make the most out of them.
For sure. I think we've spoken about it before as well, but what a lot of the regional operators have that the others don't is they have that direct connection to audiences in the home,
Yeah.
oftentimes through the broadband connection, right? So Sky in the UK, if you want to move into a new home and take up broadband, Sky is one of the operators you choose from. And just by choosing them, you're then upsold into their journey, whereby you can then purchase their, their video streaming services. So they have that unique advantage over, say, a Samsung or an LG, whereby they already have that audience base and that, I guess, that brand familiarity in places like the UK and I imagine France and the rest of Europe.
And so you said it at the top, this is a very fragmented and complicated ecosystem. It's good business for you guys, I guess.
Yeah.
So the question for me is like, how are you helping your partners, decide where to go first, right? Where to put the effort, and also what's your approach to, development in those ecosystems?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing we do with any customer is talk about regions and their audience, because they're the regions they want to launch in. So whether that be across Europe or in the US or elsewhere, will highly affect which devices are the best devices to target. Just to give you an example, in the US, you probably wouldn't launch in the US without launching on Roku, because it's significant in that market. Whereas in the UK, Roku doesn't have as much of a presence, and instead you'd probably want to prioritize, devices like Samsung, LG, or even operators like Sky. So I think the first question we always ask is about region. We also ask about demographic, because I think some of our customers, for example, have surprised us with how much of their audience is on Apple. And it's just because their audience is like, I guess, for want of a better word, a more affluent audience that is interested in going out there and spending a lot of money on, say, an Apple TV device. And maybe they're in the Apple ecosystem, and therefore Apple TV is one of their biggest devices. So yeah, they're probably the first two questions we ask. And then when it comes to approach to build for CTV, the devices that the client wants to get on will heavily influence the approach we take to building for CTV. So we've kind of done it in many different ways. You can build for CTV using many different technologies and approaches. And one of them is to use a heavily web-based approach. So you build like a single web application, and then you deploy that in as many places as you possibly can. Obviously, that's typically the quickest to market and the lowest in terms of investment, because you can have a single code base and deploy to as many places as you possibly can. But the challenge with that is that you can't deploy that to Apple TV, because Apple requires you to build in Swift or use a platform technology like React Native. And you can't deploy that web build to Roku, because Roku requires you to build in BrightScript. So you can imagine, if you want coverage across Samsung, LG, Roku, and Apple, you're already talking about potentially 3 different code bases, which can get quickly quite expensive. What a lot of the major companies like YouTube do to get around this is they have runtime environments and use open source frameworks like Cobalt. And Cobalt is like a little browser you can implement on a TV, and then you can build a web app into that browser and then deploy that browser everywhere. The challenge we have is that we don't really have the same level of access as a YouTube to, say, Samsung and LG. So it's very unlikely they'll let us launch an FX Cobalt application on their devices. So what we do to get around all this is we try and use intelligent frameworks and clever approaches to development. And to be honest, I would say our efficiency and our process and our delivery is what allows us to keep costs down and deliver things really quickly. So obviously we've been doing this for a number of years now, so we can get through, say, a web build in relatively quick time. I would say an average is like anywhere between 3 and 6 months, depending on what you're trying to achieve. And then alongside that, build for, say, Roku or Apple. Where possible, we always prefer to use native technologies, because native's way more performant. But the reality is not all customers are going to have the budget to have 3 code bases at the same time. So we have to make some tough decisions. You can deploy web-based on Android TV and and Amazon Fire, but going native will be more performant. But for example, if a customer wants to get out there quicker and to a lower budget, we might choose to put the web-based build on the Android TV and Amazon Fire devices. So there are lots of different ways to build. And I think what's exciting is, whilst there's no like silver bullet at the moment,
Mm.
like all ones deploy everywhere, I think the advent of AI might be potentially an opportunity for efficiency gain in the future.
What are the innovation you're seeing, right, in the way that you can actually, build more efficiently? Because a few things, right? Number one, there's 15 plus different, OSs. You've said it, very different, I don't know if the term language or, code, whatever, to be there. So there's so many of those. Plus there's new TVs coming every year, meaning that those platforms, those OSs are, also improving. It requires a lot. It's one thing to do the app, then you need to maintain it, etc., etc. So what are you seeing in terms of innovation that's making your life and your customers' lives, easier?
So for us, innovation in like becoming more efficient in delivery of this stuff started with testing. So that was when we, really started doing CTV work. This is like almost 10 years ago now. The biggest pain point was always testing, because it was like you don't just need 15 devices if you're launching on 15 devices, because Samsung has devices that were launched in 2017, 2018, 2019. They're all different. You can't just test it on a 2022 Samsung TV and just trust that it'll work on the 2019, because it doesn't really work like that. They're different environments. So the first place we looked for efficiency gain was in testing. We'd been manually testing for a long time. And then around 4 years ago, we started work on developing an automation testing technology. We'd experimented with some other stuff in the market, and it wasn't quite fitting exactly what we needed, because we felt like we needed a more service-driven, flexible kind of setup, rather than what a lot of the other providers in the industry do, which is a more productized approach, which actually works really well for a lot of companies, just not us in our instance, with lots of different projects. So we actually used AI in that particular build, because we use it to compare screenshots that are taken off device with the designs our designers create in Figma, to see the difference between the two. And that will automatically run and then let us know if there's variance. So the way that works in practice is, as our engineering team build these screens, they push them into a particular branch, which is main, but for want of a better word, that's kind of like our pre-production environment.
Okay.
That's run through our lab of devices, and there might be 20 devices in there for a single client. And every night it's testing against those Figma designs to say, oh, did what the engineers add into the build yesterday actually match what the design teams have designed? And that gave us huge gain. I wouldn't say it like meant that we had to reduce our QA team. What it's actually allowed us to do is it's allowed us to increase the amount of work that we do as an agency, and our team has had to scale slower whilst we've grown, because we now automate a lot of that testing. So that gave us lots of efficiency gain. And then I would say about 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, maybe less. It's hard. AI is a weird time.
Yeah. And
that's
life
when,
as an entrepreneur as well. Like, there's a lot going on for you.
I kind of blink and there's AI.
Yeah.
That's when like ChatGPT and like maybe things like Cursor started popping up. And if the audience haven't heard of Cursor, it's basically a development tool similar to Visual Studio that allows you to build applications in code. But the difference is that Cursor has an AI agent built into it. So rather than writing the code yourself now, you can actually talk to an agent, and the agent can like write that code for you. In reality, whilst this sounds great, and I think a lot of people are kind of rushing to build apps using these agents, the reality is it can be a little bit dangerous, because not knowing the code in the application and what you put in production could be a bit of a security risk. And equally, it's not amazing at building things to specs that are somewhat ambiguous and change quite frequently, which is the reality of the world we live in and what we do. So we also have been using AI and of course LLMs and code generation a little bit in development. So there's tools available now like Cursor, and if you've not heard of Cursor, it's a development tool that allows you to use an AI agent whilst writing code to build applications. And it's an interesting tool, and there's a lot of talk around it, completely changing engineers' role. I'm sure it will, given time. And I think today our approach is to use it, but somewhat cautiously. So we recognize the importance of truly understanding the stuff you're building, especially when you're in a world like us. I think I mentioned earlier, we have to. We're a front-end provider that use lots of different partners to build an app, and the biggest, the heaviest load in our engineering effort is the integrations. And well, in reality, a lot of the integrations you did, the documentation is not correct in the first place. Actually, even when building for TV, like the Samsung docs, the LG docs are often out of date or incorrect. So, LLM's not great at, building stuff to incorrect docs. And what we're instead using AI for is as a learning accelerator. So to learn different languages or, help you on a journey of learning particular functionality around video playback or something like that. And then to help, like, with little snippets of code here and there. I don't think TV in general is quite in that world yet where you can just build an app with AI given a couple of prompts. I think it's going to take a bit of time because it's a bit of a wild west, right?
Yeah.
But I'm pretty keen to get us to a world where we're using AI effectively to make us way more efficient, because my frustration with TV is always that I find that as developers, we're always working to build the basics because there's so much fragmentation, so much complexity in things that should be simple, like video playback, that most of the time in a project is just getting to the basics. Yeah. And if we can use AI to reach those basics in 1 month rather than 6, suddenly we've got 5 months where we can innovate and we can start pushing the boundaries on TV. That's where I want us to be. So I'm pretty keen for AI to improve efficiency, and yeah, we're definitely exploring it.
So what's fascinating is what you're saying about the basics. One might argue, when you look at mobile, where, well, it's good and bad that there's only 2, mobile OSs, right? There's no winning for anyone else besides Google and Apple, but it has the merit of, being fairly easy and accessible. What is making sometimes TV and CTV so challenging, right? I'm thinking beyond the tier 1 guys who have, to your point, the money to be on all of those services. When you're looking at tier 2, tier 3, it's a much more tedious approach. Of course, they want to be everywhere, but it's not that easy. And so the question is, I love the idea that AI could help you do the basics, but one might say that we should also come at a moment in time where somehow the industry is coming together and trying to streamline those basics and build standards, right? Why haven't we been able to build that again so that we can focus on the zone of genius of everyone in this industry instead of spending time, working everything out because everything is so different?
It's frustrating, right? But I think the reality is, like, the functionality, the specs of these devices changes every year. So, there's no point in us being like, right, this is the way you now build for CTV, guys. Like, this, we're going to standardize it on the front end because the TVs will change the browser specs the next release, or they'll, I don't know, like Apple TV recently had an update that meant that React Native kind of broke and you had to change some things there. So because they're always changing stuff, and I guess they would argue it's innovation, right? It ultimately puts us in a position where we're having to, every year we have to look over our apps and go, are they still supported on the older TVs? They're now going to work on the latest 2026 Samsung TV. So standardization is a tricky one, and I think it's the OS wars, right? Like I'm sure you said, and none of those providers are going to give that up easily, because if you own that screen, you own the audience, you own the advertising, real estate. And if you think about the players that are involved, I think what's interesting is that it's not a US dominated kind of like ecosystem operating systems. It's operating systems from all over different regions. You've got some from Europe now. You've got, of course, the US with things like Roku, but you've got Asia with things like Samsung and LG, and
the Chinese now with iSense Vita and
like, even if in the US Roku's winning out, doesn't mean it's going to win out in Asia. So I can't see a world in which the operating systems all go,
going to play nice,
consolidate basically. The major ones are here to stay. And that's why in my head I'm like, maybe AI is the only answer, and for us to get a little bit smarter about it on the front end, because I can't see the kind of the environments standardizing.
Yeah, for sure. So you've spoken about innovation in the background, so things that we as viewers experience without realizing it. But how about what's happening in front, right? So that can be AI, anything else that comes to mind as to cool things that you've seen or hoping to see or working on.
So I think in the short term, there's lots of innovation on CTV more recently with things like shorts, kind of like reels and different interfaces that are kind of, you know, being updated. I know Netflix had a bit of an update recently on their interface, which is all quite exciting. But I think in reality, there's no like trailblazing innovation in CTV, not from what I see at the moment. I think if you look at all the UIs in CTV, you can kind of tell they're all A/B testing and they're all like tweaking it here and there. No one really comes out and goes, right, we're fundamentally changing how CTV is done.
Yeah,
and I think
true.
one of the exciting introductions or the exciting things to come out of AI is this kind of like conversationally driven, you know, interface with technology. And I think we're definitely moving into a world where technology will become a bit more ubiquitous and it'll be a bit more, you know, voice controlled. And, you know, I think there's a possible future in which TV applications could be more voice driven and more of a conversation. And, you know, you can imagine you logging into a TV app and just having a single text input that's like, you know, how are you feeling today? And like suddenly you go on a conversation with your AI agent and it pops up with like 10 different things for you to watch. And I think that's quite exciting. I think the operating systems are kind of trying to do that already because they're doing a lot of the metadata integrations and deep linking, and their operating systems are a bit voice driven. But I think you made a really good point in something that I watched recently. I think you were in Cannes where you said they want you in their apps because there's value in the audience being in your app, right? So I don't think companies like Netflix and Apple TV are going to be cool with just having tiles on the operating system of an operating device. They want to deep link users into their app. So there's kind of innovation in that space. I think also what we're recognizing as a company is that a lot of times when audiences are in front of the TV, and that's an important thing. It's normally a collective in front of the TV, not just an individual. Normally one or two or many of them have their mobile phones out. And so there's a lot of experimentation, not just being done by us, but being done by a few with regards to second screen experiences. And we're experimenting quite a lot with gaming on CTV, and how can we potentially create party style gaming whereby, you know, you can all scan a QR code on the TV and then you're in a party game and, you know, it's a fun kind of like Saturday afternoon or evening thing to do. So I think the TVs are going to evolve into devices that are about more than just video and audio streaming. They're about potentially gaming as well. And then I think earlier this year at CES, Google released a TV that was had a camera on it. And as you walked closer to the TV, it changed from a picture to like your schedule for the day, right? And I think as soon as cameras go onto TVs, that unlocks a world of possibilities. And if there's APIs that are open to us as developers to make use of those cameras, it gets quite exciting because you could feasibly see a world whereby the TV is aware of the audience that is in front of it. So if it knows that it's just the father of the family in the room, it will just show the sports content. But if it sees the kids in the room with it, it will go, okay, well, I'll show you the kids content as well. And I think it sounds a bit dystopian and scary to think, oh, TV's in your home. But if you have said to me 20 years ago that I'd be walking around with a device in my pocket that tracked me everywhere I went and then randomly pinged me adverts telling me that I just walked past the Domino for that pizza, I'd go, no way, I'm not letting that. That's an invasion of privacy. And I think the reality is I have a phone in my pocket because it's a value exchange that benefits me. And as soon as, you know, having a camera on that TV device is a fair value exchange, like, I don't know, you get, you know, device calling out of it, for example. Like I remember watching Total Recall as a child and seeing someone use a TV to call like someone, and I was like, how are we not there yet? Where you could go into your living room, you go, "I'll call mum," and then like, you know, it just rings her and, you know, she pops up. I think as soon as there's value exchange, people will feel more comfortable at having cameras on their TV in their home. So I think that's a possible future, and I think it's exciting for us as an agency because we position ourselves at the kind of like the bleeding edge of that living room TV experience. And if the TV device is becoming more than just a TV video streaming device, it opens a world up for us to be able to help our clients engage with their audiences in really different ways.
Cool. So I have one more question for you. You don't have to answer, but you know, you're seeing, I'm sure you're seeing apps in your dreams even.
Always.
Have you seen one that you haven't developed and you thought, ooh, I wish I had done that one? And is there one that is coming up that you would be like, I'd be game to work on that one?
So I'm going to go a bit off the wall here. I'm big into music. And I think the Spotify app is great. What I like about the Spotify app is that it's a completely different experience to what we build here every day, right? It's, you know, audio driven, you're listening to the content as you're navigating the app, and it's just a completely different interface. And I think that, that in itself is like innovation that looks a bit different from the kind of typical Rails and cards stuff that we've seen. In terms of looking ahead, I mean, I know we spoke about the League One opportunity. I think they probably need someone like us to come in and give them a hand. Although it's getting very close to their launch date, so I'm sure they've got that covered. We're big on sports, right? So anything in sports, we're incredibly excited to be working on. But beyond that, as me personally, one of my dreams is to work with, say, YouTube on that application. But again, looks like they've kind of got it covered. So yeah, it remains to be seen.
Who knows? Who knows? A lot can happen. Who knows? I love it. Okay, and so you're coming to speak at Streaming Made Easy Live. You're coming with your co-founder, Tom. Can you tell us a bit more about this session?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the future of TV. So I touched on some of the stuff I spoke about here. We've recognized recently that we're in a position as a company that that's quite unique in that we have a lot of freedom just to try and push the boundaries a little bit and try and innovate and try and do things a little bit differently on TV. Yeah, so we're looking forward to Stream Made Easy just for IBC. Like you said, going to be there with Tom, my co-founder, and we're talking about how to engage those future audiences. So actually, as an agency, we're not by design, just by chance, just because of our journey. We're quite a young group. I'd say the average age of our team is probably about 28. So in the team of 75, there's a lot of youngsters in here. And the way they consume media is completely different to obviously what we're typically used to as a kind of industry. So we want to kind of crack the lid on that a little bit, talk about where they're going for their content and how we can engage them, talk a bit about second screen experiences and that kind of stuff. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Nice. I'm super happy to have you on board. That's a wrap with Matthew Duhig from FX Digital. So FX Digital is partnering with Streaming Made Easy Live. Matthew and Tom from FX will be on stage with us. It's super exciting. I love what you guys do. And I think, let's count the days, minus 2 months. We'll see you in Amsterdam. Thank you, everyone.